Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space, where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of With Love, Jenny. We are kicking off the new year by interviewing some special guests who are out there making a difference. In our last episode, and if you missed it, please go listen to it, choosing to take care of yourself today predicts how well you'll live your life during your long life era, a movement created by Marla Letizia. Marla, I have already heard from so many people who appreciated your new perspective on aging from the last podcast and how our mindset about aging really does impact our longevity. So if you all haven't heard it, please circle back and listen because it's very, very powerful no matter what age you are. So today, Marla is back with a colleague who has joined forces with her to create something that I personally can't wait to hold in my hands. Dr. Jean Bokelmann is a physician, also a very brilliant woman who has written a textbook that doctors learn from. And she is also here today to talk to us about having a resource for good nutrition as we march into our long life era years. So without saying anything more, I'm going to dive right in and let these two guests educate us and inspire us. And we're going to get to know two inspiring, brilliant women that I am just so privileged to be in your energy today. Thank you so much for being here.
I just want to say, Jenny, that was really great. And we are super, super thrilled to be here, truly.
Thank you. Thank you. Marla, let's start because our podcast listeners can't see who's talking, so they're going to get to know our voices. But Marla, let's start by sharing the story about how you met Jean and how this project came into fruition, and then turn it over for Jean to tell her version of that.
Okay. Well, here is something that even Jean doesn't know. And I had completely forgot about it until I was thinking about doing the podcast with you, Jenny. And I think what Jean doesn't realize, and she's going to reflect on it right now, is that our project is a cookbook. And it is a cookbook where we're combining art with science. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that as we move forward. But the idea for me writing a cookbook came from Jenny. Jean, did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. And I had completely forgot about it.
I did too.
Yes, but it was right after I had started with the Long Life Era community, which is a Facebook group you can find on Facebook. It's a group, Long Life Era community. And I was feeling, and we all were feeling, that there was something very relevant about what I was talking about, and I could feel it as well. And Jenny, out of nowhere, said, you know what, Marla, I think you should write a cookbook, maybe a Long Life Era cookbook. And Jean, I remember saying to her, and maybe I said it on the phone to you when we were talking about doing it, Jean, but I went all of a sudden, snap, like a bolt of lightning hit my head. And I remember answering with, oh my God, and I know exactly who to write it with. And I started to tell Jenny all about you. And what is significant about the three of us being in this moment right now is that this weekend, Jenny, Jean and I completed at least the first phase of 142 recipes.
Wow.
That are currently in the book, right? And so my job was to write the recipes. It's Jean's job is she is isolating ingredients in every recipe, and there is an index in our chapter 10 that lays out what every ingredient is good for in your body, good for inflammation, pre-cancer. I mean, she's going to tell you all about that in just a minute. But it is really apropos that the three of us are together today, a day after that final recipe was completed. So
I am. That's so exciting, Marla, because I forgot that we were doing a coaching call, and you were knowing there you were right on the cusp of something, and you couldn't quite catch it, and all of a sudden we came to that together, and you took it and ran, and that's what's exciting to me. And you told me the story about I Know Who, and you had just reconnected to her and said we had such an intense connection that you almost felt then there was something more for you two to do together. So for me to sit on the sidelines to watch that and to meet Eugene today, to have you here, that is a pretty phenomenal thing. And the task of what you created was no small feat. And so to be at this stage is really worth celebrating. So congratulations on that. And continue to tell us. The part that intrigues me about that is that you're not just giving recipes that taste good, but recipes that nourish our body in a specific way. And there's often times when I've heard of the brain diet, and it's like, well, what do I eat for the brain diet, and why, and what's in it? And so, Jean, tell us a little bit about your input on that, because it sounds like that's your side of the cookbook.
Oh, yeah. Well, first I want to back up and say, Jenny, thank you for hearing my call a year and a half ago, because I had written this other book. It's actually a medicinal herb book, and it took me 4 years to write it. It has 700 pages and a lot of research in it and that sort of thing. And Marla knew about that, so I think that, books, is kind of a natural, and the fact that she realized that science needed to be a part of it is, that speaks to Marla's brain. She is more science than you would recognize, and she's a lot of art as well. And so anyway, what I was saying about thank you for hearing my call is because about a year and a half ago, I was done with the book. It had been out a couple years, and I was trying to find my purpose. And I was just in a little despair. I was floundering and trying to figure out, I said to one of my former medical colleagues, he asked how retirement was, and I said, I'm trying to find something to stimulate my brain, to channel my brain into. And this came along, and it's just been so nourishing for that part of me that has always had that. And it was looking. So thank you for the suggestion. It's enriched my life so much. And thank you, Marla, for thinking of me.
I mean, I didn't think of you. A lightning bolt hit me, and that's where I landed. But I also, just to add some more fluid and energy to what happened is, Jean was in the car driving with her husband, and I could hardly wait to talk to her about this. And I don't remember, you were on your way to Salt Lake, I think, or
yeah.
or you'd already dropped your grandson off and you were driving back, I think.
Oh, right.
And I was getting out of the car at the orthodontist, and I had to get into my appointment, and I started talking to Jean, and I had a lot of ideas that I wanted to talk to her about. And I remember, I was really nervous. I remember I was nervous because it felt so real. It's funny about how when something is so real, that's what scares you, because It's coming from such a deeper place.
Yes.
And so I threw out one idea to her, and I threw out this other idea, and then I casually threw out this idea of doing a cookbook together. And then I jumped forward to something else really fast, and she said, wait, Marla, stop. She said, can we go back a moment? And I said, sure. And she said, cookbook. She said, that just gave me chills when you said it. Do you remember saying that, Jean?
Not specifically, but that's because I don't remember most of the stuff I say.
Well, anyway, that was my memory. And so we went back and so we decided that on that phone call that this was a great idea and that we were going to run forward with it. And so then we started.
Let's back up a step because there's a story before that. How did the two of you meet?
Well, we first met in junior high school, I think 7th grade at K.O. Knutson in Las Vegas. But I remember Marla mostly from earlier years, initially from 8th grade, because she came to 8th grade with this Vidal Sassoon haircut. And all the girls were just like, oh my gosh, everybody wanted one, and probably half the girls went out and got one so they could look like Marla. Marla had this,
oh my God,
just beautiful, still does have this beautiful thick hair. And it was just like, it just was beautiful. And she was just so cute, just so cute. And she always was, she's one of those that girls would be jealous of. And I never felt jealous of her because she was just always so adorable and nice. And, and we did not run in the same circles. I was kind of a band nerd. and Marla was one of the Brandans, which was the dance team, all the cute girls out there. And so, but I think we liked each other. We would say hi to each other in the hall, but we never had we never sat at the same table at lunch or anything like that. So we knew each other, and I think we liked each other from afar.
Yeah. Yes, my memory is that we always passed each other in the hall. We'd always smile at each other and wave, but I don't know that I ever had a conversation with Jean at all in high school. And also one of the other things that I will note is that Jean was the valedictorian of her class. And I was not. I'm a B+ student, but I'm far from a valedictorian, and B+ A-. And so back in the day, we graduated in 1971. They didn't have A/B classes for those who were a little brighter or whatever, but I believe they actually homogenized us in a way that we were unaware of, because I wasn't also not any of Jean's classes or Betty Schnurr's classes, or, I was not in a lot of classes of what were showing as really super bright kids. And so they were a little more sectored. So of course we weren't in any classes together either.
So how did you come back together?
Well, at our 40th?
Yeah.
Our 40th high school reunion, I remember having a chat with her, and I remember just having a discussion about business. She was telling me about her work and her business. And I just remember saying, business is so hard, because I've always worked for somebody, but my husband had a business, and just getting that going was so difficult. And so I really, I remember telling her that, and we had sort of a nice talk then, but it was then nothing until our 50th. And then I think that's when sort of the fireworks happened. We just really connected.
Yes.
And
there was, literally, I could feel the air. Like when I recollected, I can feel like how perfect the air was that night. It was not warm. It was warm, but not hot, but it was cool, but not cold. It was a perfect Las Vegas October night. And I feel like we were standing right in the middle of that patio, actually, as I visualized where we were standing on that patio. And we just said hello, gave each other a hug, and we had this 10, 15-minute conversation. And it was so, I don't remember exactly what it was about. Maybe Jean does. No, I don't either. But I do remember how I felt when having the conversation. And I remember how I felt when I turned and walked away. And there was just this, like, she turned to rock to the left and I went to the right. And I was like, wow, that was some conversation. And I remember feeling that it was the most momentous conversation I'd actually had all night. And she had the same feeling, right?
Yeah, I remember when we had that coaching call, and it was right after that reunion that you attended. And I'm I'm sharing this part of the story before we get into the whole project they're doing because of a couple things I want my listeners to reflect on is that trusting your intuition and feeling the energy. If you haven't been hearing them talk about that, like, there was this, they could describe where they were in that moment that she called and said, hey, I have these ideas. But when I had my call and said, I feel like you should write a long life era cookbook that helps for someone like me who isn't educated in nutrition other than the obvious. It's getting that detail, getting that, if I know that I'm low on iron, what are the ways for me to get that need met in my body? And what if my body isn't actually absorbing the nourishment? What is going on, And so we started talking about it, and I will tell you that instant that idea was a lightning bolt moment. Immediately you talked about, I know exactly who will co-author this book with me. I just talked to her after a 50-year class reunion, and I knew when I walked away from her, there was more. You said there was an intense connection. It didn't matter what the conversation was. It mattered that you two were ordained to create this, and you got a taste of that connection that circled back to you. And all of that is just when you have clear intention, and the stars align, however you want to describe what happens out there, pay attention to those universal nudges, pay attention to the energy you feel and what lights you up. And I want to comment on what Jean talked about when you were saying, you had wrapped up a project and you're retired. And we have this society that encourages retirement, but it comes with this brain deadening what are we doing? And for some, they find an avenue through travel or, their circle of friends and stay involved in different things to keep their brain active. But it's so important to keep your brain stimulated and engaged and not just there at TVs all day long or, it's an interesting time. I don't remember when AARP started sending me things, but I know I'm already on the senior citizen list.
The week of your 50th birthday.
Okay, well, that's a long time ago. I've been there. But I'm in that senior citizen mode, still love my work and still aspire to do way more. My mom lived a healthy lifestyle of good eating habits, and she walked every day. And she lived to be 94. And I remember at the age I was when I remembered it, was I'm looking at going into these retirement years, and I still have 30 years left if I meet her path of living to be 94. 30 years. And I thought 30 years of retirement sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I just feel like it's finally, after raising 5 children and, helping my husband with his business all the time, it was like, it's kind of time for me to spread my wings a little bit and see what I can do. And so it's, in order to really live out those 30 years, what I learned is they can be years of decline or they can be years of the best years of my life, and that I get that mindset to create it. And that's why the long life era is so important to plug into, because it does really start with a mindset. But I'm thrilled because this is another aspect to the long life era that gives an action step. It's like it supports, it comes up underneath that mindset. So let's dive into what makes your cookbook different and Marla is going to want to chime in on.
I just wanted to tell you something. Someone sent this line to me yesterday, and it ties into what you just said. And the quote is, where the rest of your life is the best of your life.
Yes.
What a great tagline to the long life era.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about, now we know how you met. You've known each other, and then you were, or like a divine appointment to create this life-changing for people. I mean, this is exciting for me. I feel like it's such a life-changing gift to the world. So I'm super excited to get my copy of that. But tell us a little bit more about when this comes out and we can all have it. What is it going to do? How is it different?
Well, I'll take this initially anyway. Marla can amend, add and amend as needed. The subtitle of this is, I can't remember specifically, but it's a blending of the culinary arts and the sciences. So it's an art and science. And Marla has, she does cooking. She's a cook. She's a chef. She has a media presence with her cooking. And she has developed some amazing recipes, and they're just beautiful and delicious, and all of the things that please the senses. And what's amazing is most of these recipes are also just powerhouses for longevity. They're so full of a variety of antioxidants and other nutritional factors that, protein and the things that we really need to pay attention to during the long life era. And so we're trying to highlight that and give some examples to shift some of the eating away from sort of the habitual American cuisine. I don't know if I'd even call it cuisine.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. To a diet that gives your body everything it needs to enhance its likelihood of a long health span. Mm-hmm. Health span being different from lifespan, because you can live into your late years in miserable condition on a slew of drugs, or you can live to that same age climbing mountains until the very end. So health span is that.
I love that reference. I hadn't thought of it, but it is different than your lifespan, because if I live to 94 and I spend the last 10 years struggling with health and suffering, those aren't my quality of life I hope to have. And what I do today determines that. What we did along the way all determines that. But that's another question that I have. If we grew up on the standard American diet, SAD, or my children who grew up and we had this fast lifestyle, we had this rush from school to baseball to swim team kind of lifestyle where drive-through food became their staple on a lot of nights. And so eating that, their whole childhood, are we ever able to, is it ever too late to say, oh, I've kind of already done damage to myself? If we start eating healthy, what happens in the body? Yeah, speak to that, Jean.
So it's never too late. And Marla's much better at statistics than I am. Numbers kind of go in one ear and out the other with me. So I can't quote the statistics, but there is research showing that changing your diet to what I consider, we both consider a healthy diet at age 70 will extend your lifespan by, say, 5 years. Changing it at age 80 will extend it by 2 years. It's something like that. I could be wrong on those numbers, but it's the point being that it can make a difference. It is not too late.
Okay, good. So we're not all...
I'm just looking, it was a statistic by Dr. Mark Hyman, who wrote the book Young Forever. And by the way, the long life era is actually not advocating for young forever, because that almost sounds anti-aging to me. And his book is beautifully written, and I'm a big fan. But I think that for us, we're just talking about living your best life in your long life era, and whatever, that means to you. And his statistic is that if you stop smoking, start eating right, and start exercising, you will add an extra 30% of health span to your lifespan. I think that's
wow.
I'm trying to find it, but it's significant.
Right. I like what you said, Marla, about not trying to stay young forever, because we are so bombarded with products that try to do that, the anti-aging, instead of just letting us age gracefully. And what I find in people that are in their 60s or 70s that live a healthy lifestyle and they age gracefully are so inspiring, because their beauty is so natural. And it's real and attainable, and so it's not underestimating what good food, nutrition, exercise, and just your own spiritual personality, is that, are you naturally a positive person? Do you, look forward to your day and approach things with a positive outlook is something we actually can visibly see.
I actually think that I just attended a health and spirituality retreat, and truly the spiritual side of who we are has significance to do with longevity. And there's plenty of data that supports that for sure.
I want to back up because some of our listeners may not have listened to the last podcast where you were my guest and you explained what the long life era was. And I'll still encourage all of you to go listen to it because we spent a whole podcast on it. But in a nutshell, can you just tell everybody what we're talking about when we say long life era, and also invite them to join the movement? What would they need to, how can they find it?
Well, they would go to Long Life Era Community on Facebook.
Okay.
So, and it's the group, it's not the personal page, because my personal page also has the Long Life Era title in it. But you want to find the Long Life Era Community Facebook group and just ask to join and join the conversation. But the reason that I started the long life era is that it is truly nothing more than a reframing and redefining of the word senior citizen. When you really look at the eras of our lives, the first 18 years is childhood, second 18 years young adulthood, that takes us then to 36, and 36 to 50, which is 14 years, is midlife. It is the shortest era of our lives as defined by us. But when you look at that, your long life era begins at age 50 and can last for 50 years or longer, right?
Wow.
Then it is your long life era. The problem is that the word senior citizen, when you start to approach this age, and when you get AARP magazine in the mail, which happens the week of your 50th birthday, it's the most insulting thing. Everybody describes it as the most insulting thing that ever happened to them.
I'm not old yet.
Yeah, what is going on? I'm not a senior citizen. And yet, by the age of 55, we're also willing to take the senior citizen discount at the movie theater, right? Because we've had 5 years to sort of ease into it. But the problem is that senior citizen brings up a stereotype and an objectification of people living at that stage of their life, in which they're asked to, it sounds like the end of a lane, and not just the end, but a dead end, in which you're asked to get into a box, move out of the lane altogether, to be objectified and stereotyped, and to turn your body over to managed healthcare and your wallet over to Wall Street pharmaceutical companies. And once you get yourself into the system, it is really difficult because you're talked down to by some of the doctors. It's just a bad place to be. And the media during the open enrollment time shows us who we're supposed to be by these images of what they call, if you're a senior, I mean, some of these seniors in these commercials are not dressed like our generation, jeans and mine, but they're dressed like my grandparents' generation with my grandparents' hairdos. And they do not in any way reflect the people that I know, nor the people that I saw the night of my 50th class reunion, which were people who were energetic, who were completely digitally adept, had made playlists and were hooking them up to the Bluetooth of the speakers and the playlist of our generation's music, or they were taking selfies and they were airdropping the pictures to each other. It was texting each other their contact information. This was a youthful, in touch with today's group of people, and certainly not like what I had seen coming back at me in those commercials. I never identified with those commercials, but I was about to turn 70, and I had just had my 50th class reunion, and I saw a commercial the night of my 50th reunion that put me in a tailspin. and really started to make me feel like I was irrelevant in society.
Right. And it can happen. And I know my husband's passed that milestone, and it is a different response. Society responds in all kinds of, personal and in impersonal ways, subliminally.
They're doing that in your 60s too. It's just that you're not identifying with it. But when suddenly you begin to identify with the fact that you are past midlife, that's when it starts to hit.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's the long life era, in case anyone was wondering. And so here to support that piece, which we talked about earlier, is a cookbook that actually really supports that and gives us that science that Jean was speaking about, because that's real important. I feel like it's going to be an educational type of thing. And then I'm sure, because I've seen Marla's cooking shows and how beautiful the things are, that like the presentation is everything. She has her own garden out there. And I don't know. I grew up eating from a garden. We had 2 huge gardens growing up. And I went to college for the first time, and I remember eating green beans on the cafeteria tray, and they were not my mom's canned green beans from our garden, and thinking, what in the world are these, and why did they were terrible. And the difference, I could just feel that they did not at that point, the nutrition was processed out, and I could feel it in my introduction into not getting food from my garden after I left from high school. So I'm excited to hear, well, first, I'm just excited to get it. But even before that comes out, and you'll have to give us some ideas on when we can expect that. But if we were to ask each of you, and you can have different answers, but if our listeners could change one habit with regard to their longevity, what do you each think would be the most impactful new habit?
I would say stop eating ultra-processed foods. That is clearly detrimental. That research is just showing how, ultra-processed foods versus non-ultra-processed foods is like a huge fork in the lifespan, health span trajectory.
Give us examples of what ultra-processed foods are.
Okay, there's different levels of processing. Your mother's green beans were processed. They were canned, right? What was in there besides the green beans? Probably nothing, sometimes a little salt, sometimes some herbs or spices. So that's just considered processed. And processed, freezing foods, canning foods, that's generally considered, especially freezing, is almost as good and sometimes better than fresh food.
Okay.
Because the cold temperature kills bacteria, right? That's why it's considered better.
And the food also is frozen shortly after it's picked, so it's retained more of the nutrients.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So both of those. So that's processed. And then there's like minimally processed, which would be maybe a baked good that has in it a bunch of ingredients, but the ingredients are all natural ingredients. There's no artificial chemicals or emulsifiers. Once you start getting into, as they say, things that you wouldn't recognize looking at them, like, what flour looks like. If it's something that's not in your kitchen, if an ingredient in the package you buy is not something in your kitchen, it's probably ultra processed.
Also, as an example, like chips, cookies. If you read the ingredients label of any of those things, you cannot recognize things as being in your kitchen. And you're off to Google to try to figure out what that is.
Yeah, and breakfast cereals. That's
the worst.
And, we feed our kids. I fed my kids, and that's what I grew up on, was breakfast cereal. Good old, well, I won't say the name brands, but they all do it. And if you just read what's in there, and a lot of it is the chemical names for vitamins that are thrown in. So the question is that good or bad? It's probably okay if they're fortified with vitamins, but is it necessary? Not really. Not if you're eating the way you should be eating.
Yeah. And also, I can't think of the word, a preservative. Any preservatives are really ultra processed, and emulsifiers for sure. And these are things that cause high inflammation in your body. And it's really scary, actually. And I can significantly remember a moment like in late middle school, when food started to change. I actually can remember it. And then by the time that I was in the 9th grade, I had started to put on weight that I otherwise would not have throughout all of my life. Yeah. And so that's when the food started to change.
The other thing about processed foods is that the food industry has figured out the way to make us kind of addicted to food, make us crave food, make us eat a whole bag of chips. And salt and sugar are two of the key ingredients, and neither of those in abundance are good, especially in the long life era. Salt tends to be associated with increased cardiovascular and kidney problems. So increased heart, blood pressure, kidney problems. There are people like Marla who does just fine with salt. She's got great blood pressure and can just, down the salt. But most of us become more sensitive to it. So even if it has a bunch of natural ingredients in it, salt and sugar are two things that can, number one, that are not good for reasons of inflammation, like Marla was saying. And the other thing is just that we overconsume them. So we take in too many calories.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the process that Jean and I have been using. And we were meeting for the very first time. She lives in Idaho. I live in Vegas, but she was down here in Vegas. We met at a restaurant. And I brought a bunch of cookbooks that we were going to talk about. And, we had no idea how we were going to do this. But I remember getting up to run into the ladies' room before she got there. And while I was walking into the ladies' room, I said, gee, I wonder what I'm going to order to drink. I don't know why, but I asked myself that. And because I was waiting for her. And while I went into the bathroom and got out, I realized that what we drink and how we hydrate is really, really important. And so the very first thing that we talked about was hydration. And we decided that we were going to make that the first chapter of the book. And it is hydration, and water, and maybe how to flavor water actually was the first chapter of the book. And I will also say that we didn't do this. Now we have one chapter, chapter 9, which is about celebrating, because Jean and I both believe that 90% you eat one way and 10%, have a heyday, celebrate. It's Christmas. These are the things you love to eat. Don't restrict yourself. Enjoy. Their tradition, their, everything. So the cookbook itself is not, appetizer. It's not side dish, main course, like the traditional cookbook. It is, I don't have these memorized, so help me out here. It's hydration, and then it's snacks. Like, what do you eat for a snack? Like, that's where I get in trouble during the day is I'm hungry. I don't want to eat a full meal, but what can I snack on? And then after snacks, it was eat the rainbow, right? And then our final chapter, chapter 10, which is about celebrations, actually goes by brunch, appetizer, salads, soup, main course, and side dishes. But I also want to say this to anybody who's going to take on a project like Jean and I did. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We figured out hydration and snacks, and 3 months into it, Jean felt, rightfully so, that she didn't have a voice in the cookbook. And I was feeling that she didn't either, because I was just starting to write recipes, and I wasn't really sure what the other side of this was going to be. And so we had to pause the writing, and it was in trying to figure out we needed to refine our true vision.
Right.
And the minute we realized that Jean is the medical side and the science side, and she had written this textbook for, almost every herb and spice known to man. But now she's writing another textbook, if you will, which is every ingredient known to man, which basically almost every cooking ingredient is in this cookbook. And the book, we humbly call it a masterpiece because there is no, not so humble, Jean, but there is no other cookbook out there that has these beautiful recipes that have been written. And then every ingredient in these recipes, in the back of the book, there is an index for exactly what these things are good for. So there is well, I don't want to call it an appendix because we don't like that word, but what do we call it? Just chapter 10. But it is alphabetical, ingredient by alphabet, right? And then a table for like body parts, if you will, good for brain, good for the gut, good for that. It's because, if you're suffering with a bad gut, then you want to go back to the table and find like all the ingredients, and then the ingredients will have the page numbers of the recipe. So it's a textbook at the back of a cookbook, and every recipe itself has 4 items that are highlighted. We were calling it Chemistry Corner, but now what are we calling it, Jean?
I think we're calling it the Spotlight on Ingredients.
Yeah, Dr. Jean's Spotlight on Ingredients. So, and we came up with that idea, but we were 3 months into the book and realized it just wasn't working. And so we put the brakes on for a couple of weeks and talked through it. And then one day it just fell in front of us and we knew we had something really special. And then we started again.
That's awesome. It's an awesome example of when you have that vision and you go for it. It's not always smooth sailing. Because it's the right idea doesn't mean you won't hit those pauses, those needs to stop and adjust and say, wait, there's something missing. Let's go back and pick it up and pull it forward. And then the brilliance of it really comes out. So no matter if it's a cookbook or a building that you're building, that's kind of the process for people that sometimes will stop and feel like they're not supposed to do it anymore. And it's like, no, carry on, keep going. So I love that. And Jean, I love that you've brought what you wrote a whole textbook about with the natural herbs and the medicine of our herbs. I am so excited and can't wait to get a copy of this because I know intellectually or I know physiologically, like I go to the farmer's market and my mouth waters around certain things, which is my body saying, buy that, prepare it and eat it, right? And I get those things, but the herbs, I am every spring I can't wait. And I go get all these different herbs and I put them in my car. And then I just want to sit in the car and smell them. The vibration of those raises the vibration in me. I can just feel myself being elated to just the aroma of them, but I don't know really how to incorporate them into I keep herbs all the time and I don't necessarily the traditional cilantro I have and recipes for and traditional basil. And you're going to tell me no, but on some of those, but that is all I know. And so I'm really eager because I really believe those are medicine and we need less pharmaceuticals if we understand how to properly prepare and use the medicine of food.
Yeah, I made a face just because I happen to be genetically one of those people that cilantro and I can't eat it, but it's very good for you.
And good. I was hoping you weren't going to tell me I couldn't have it anymore because...
No. It's very good for your body. I just have to find that good someplace else.
Yes.
So that kind of highlights something I wanted to talk about, which is how different Marla and I are. We are 2 very different creatures. She hates cilantro. I love cilantro. We've got our genetic backgrounds are so different, but we are just different creatures. And so for us to come into this collaboration, we were projecting 2 different visions, and the process of it's been really a joy to watch us kind of meld this into what we are calling our masterpiece. And we call it that because I think we're just so delighted with it. We're so delighted with what shape it's taking. we have to talk about things like, I'm a vegetarian, sort of a semi-pescatarian. I will eat fish. And Marla is a dedicated carnivore. And so it's like and Marla really doesn't, she's got this thing about carbohydrates, anything with carbs in it. And I'm all into the whole grains and that, every day I have to have a whole grain in my diet. So we've had to work out some of our differences and say, okay, how are we going to do this? Because we want to, I want to talk about the whole grains. She wants to have some great meat dishes, and it's actually been such a wonderful exercise. It's a dance. It's been just such a dance.
Oh, that's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually am really glad you said that, because I recently had a workshop here at my house and I had to prepare food for the people coming. And we didn't have a gluten-free this time, which was new, but we had a carnivore and we had 3 vegetarians. And then we had people that just eat anything, which is so refreshing when you're not an experienced chef like me. And so I often wonder, and they all look happy and healthy. And I'm like, well, if you were trying to say I need to follow something, what should I be? I'm not a full vegetarian. I will eat meat, but I don't necessarily crave meat. So I don't know I'm in a confusing state when I look at how do I follow what my body needs? And all I can do is just pay attention to like what my body tells me and how it feels afterward. But it's kind of confusing out there. So it's fun for me to hear you all are so opposite, yet you found this way.
Just look at us. Our DNA is completely different.
Right.
Right. Jean is Scandinavian by DNA, and I am a Romanian, Russian. What am I losing there? Polish, but that's all that Eastern Europe. That's that same Eastern Europe thing. And there was a lot of meat in Eastern Europe, right? This is what my ancestors were raised on, where she was, raised more pescatarian, vegetarian. And so I would say to most people is look at what your heritage is and then look up what your ancestors ate, and chances are that is what fits and suits you best.
Right. That's so fascinating. Before we wrap up, I'm going to open a can of worms that probably I could spend another hour with both of you. This one's on my heart. I have grandchildren, and I have 2 particular boys between 6 and 9, and they're such picky eaters that it's very difficult for them to get the nutrition. One in particular that I see more often than the other is you look at him and he seems nutrient deficient, and the parents put good food, and it's chips. He just wants chips. He'd eat that. Both of them are addicted to chips, which have no nutritional value. What is happening? Is it that because they can? Is it how do you force feed good nutrition? Is there a point that I always feel like the body will want what it recognizes as nourishing food, but with them, it's not that.
You want to go first on that, Jean? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to go first, or you do? You do.
I'll go first. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that shows some chips do have some nutritional value, but they don't provide the total nutrition that a kid would need. And the reason they're doing that is because chips are formulated to be addicting. And so that's all they want to eat because they're good. They give the salt and the sugar at just the right ratio. They've lost their palate for herbs and spices and that sort of thing. And so what I would recommend is, number one, just not having any chips in the house so that when they do get hungry, they have to eat something other than chips, and have fruits and vegetables. Kids will eat fruit over vegetables, but that's okay. Even though it's kind of a sugary thing, kids need a lot of energy, and the fruits are full of all of these antioxidant compounds. And then trying to figure out a way to get protein in would be the other thing.
I'm trying to find this. I'm going to give you the wrong specifics here, but you'll get the idea. So R.J. Reynolds, which was one of the biggest cigarette manufacturers in the world, and Philip Morris, the second largest food manufacturer in the world. At the time that the American government took tobacco off of broadcast media, and they knew they were going to start losing money. I mean, the first thing they did is they just went to Asia and Europe and just sold more cigarettes there and opened up Asia in a way that had never been opened before with the tobacco, American tobacco. But what they did is one of them went out and bought General Mills, and the other one went out and bought Quaker and Post. And what they did is they took the same scientists, and I may have those come. I know General Mills was one of them, and I know Quaker and Post. I'm just not sure who was assigned to who because I can't find this information. And what they did is they took the same scientists who were putting chemicals into the cigarettes to addict people, and in the breakfast cereal for children, in the chips, which at the time I started eating them were probably really potatoes that were deep fried, put salt on and sold. And they were probably fried in lard as opposed to vegetable oil and emulsifiers, right? And they started putting these addictive chemicals in breakfast cereals, chips, cookies, and everything else. And that is what significantly now, if you have a child and they've been on baby formula, that baby formula is loaded with sugar. And there is an addictive property to this sugar. I mean, my grandson, when my children used to go to T-ball, at the end of every T-ball game, all the parents brought oranges sliced in quarters so they could eat oranges, and sometimes sandwiches, like a quarter of a sandwich for each kid, to help get their blood sugar up but not spiked. I went to my grandson's T-ball game on a Saturday morning, and the bags they handed out had donuts, lollipops, licorice. And I'm sitting there thinking their blood sugars, and they're starving right now because they just ran off all of their energy, and they need energy. They don't need sugar to spike them.
Right.
And that's not the, nutrition that they need. So anyway, I'm just so upset about that. Where American food has gone is just killing me. And stuff like red dye number 3, finally illegal in America, has been illegal in Japan and Europe for years.
I think it's killing all of us until we make some big changes. And, this past summer, I had the privilege of going to Italy with my husband for 2 weeks. And I had been being treated for GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. I think that's what it is, heartburn and digestion. And I got over there, and they eat their dinner. First of all, they eat like at 8 or 9 at night, which I could never do. And second, it was pasta, and it was red sauce, and it was all the good stuff and breads. And I didn't want to not enjoy Italy in the culinary sense. I didn't have any trouble. I had no sinus problems. I had no digestive issues over there. And I've heard people who were celiac or gluten-free could go have it. The food is made differently. You could see that. We were in a restaurant. My son's a chef, and he went there with us and talked to the chef at a restaurant that we had a family event at. And he gave him the recipes, and it's almost like, how do we duplicate this here? And he can, but it's almost there. It's all, even the meat is farmed there. Everything, there's nothing really preserved the way we do. So I that's going to, maybe I'm going to have you all back at some point to talk about our children, because I'm so concerned watching what my children are struggling with to get their children to consume food that they need. And I see it happening in behavior. I see learning disabilities. I see, diagnoses getting put on them that I think is all going back to food related, and how does it affect their sleep pattern, which is so important when they're growing, and how is it supplying the body with the proper nutrients. And I just feel really excited, like maybe this is your second project, is is a kids' food cookbook to get them excited to eat these things. So,
oh, wow. Did you hear that?
just when you thought you might be wrapping up, I'm going to rev you up on something.
Right. But I do want to say this. So as you know, Jenny, I am a columnist, a monthly columnist in our Las Vegas Review Journal, which is Las Vegas's city newspaper, like the LA Times is to LA and New York Times is to New York. And I recently wrote an article about the Long Life Era Longevity Cookbook. And we allowed people to email me to get on the list for when it is coming out. So we're projecting, hopefully, that it's going to be coming out at the end of the year for the holiday season, because we have left to edit, we have left to test, right? We have to test these recipes. And we have left to find a publisher. We're not focused on how anything. We're just taking one step at a time and we'll just figure it out. But if any of your listeners would like to email me at marla@longlifeera.com, marla@longlifeera.com, 2 E's from LIFEERA.com, you can get on the list, and it's first come, first serve. And we already have about 18 people on the list from the newspaper article.
Right.
So, get on the list and send me an email, and I'll send you a reply that says you're on the list, and you'll be the first to get the offer.
I haven't gotten on the list yet, so that's my next step.
Okay.
I'll also put that in the show notes, so if people want to get on that list, I really hope you will, and support these ladies in this amazing project that I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like
that you brought about.
It's a big thing. I'm so humbled that I had a moment of connection with you guys before we knew where it was going to go, but I'm just delighted to meet both of you on here. I wish both of you luck in completion. I know it's tedious. The devil's in the details sometimes, and I like to stay up in the grand picture of things, and then when it gets down and dirty, it's like, oh, it's tedious. So hang with it and get your edits done and offer this gift to the world, because, oh my goodness, we need it. So I can't thank you all enough for being here, and I'll keep our listeners updated as well. And I might be having you back to pick your brains on more things. I feel like we just scratched the surface of really important topics today, but thank you both for what you're doing and for being inspiring to the Long Life Era. We're not done. We're just not done when we hit the 50 AARP part, or the 60 or the 70. We're just getting started. So,
or even the 80. I mean, just watching. And I know that I said when I was on your podcast that when I'm in my 90s, I'm going to look at what the world needs and start another business. And I intend to do exactly that.
That inspired me, because when I think of 90, I picture my mom's 90s and I'd be winding down. And when you said that, I was like, the biggest thing you might ever do is going to be in your 90s. That was the mindset shift, right? Like, okay, it really pay attention to what is our belief around aging, because it's also a predictor, right? And so, all right, well, thank you, ladies, so much. And to our listeners, I hope this has been enlightening for you. And I hope that you can take that first big step to start taking control of our health through nutrition and our mindset. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. And I will have in the show notes ways to get all of that.
And also to get the longlifemindset.com.
Yes, I'll put all that in.
They can embrace the mindset.
There you go. So we'll sign off saying that, embrace the mindset with love. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself and do so with love.